we're going to start on our Unit 6 review. Okay, remember you can use your review in your notes on your test. Okay, so when we're first starting off, we got to decide if these are categorical variables or quantitative. Remember, categorical, that means you're going to answer with a category. And quantitative means that you would answer, I didn't spell that right, but you're going to answer with a number. Okay, so that's kind of the best way to decide what is what. So number one, the color of a dinosaur. Okay, if I'm taking that data, I'm going to answer with a color, so that means it's going to be categorical because it's not a number. Okay, number two, number of students who eat school lunch. If I say how many students eat school lunch, you're going to answer with a number, which means that's going to be quantitative. Okay, your favorite school lunch, when I answer this, you could answer pizza or Crispitos or whatever. This is not a number answer, so this means that this is categorical. All right. Next one, it says a school offers 2 music classes, band and choir. Out of 66 students in band, 36 are male, 12 males, and 42 females are in choir. There are no students who are enrolled in both classes. So we got to basically come fill in this chart based off the information. It said out of the 66 students in band. That means that there's a total of 66 students in band. Okay, now we're just going to keep going in and filling in our information. 36 are male. So no males in band is 36. So that's going to go right there. Okay. Then it says there are 12 males and 42 females in choir. So 12 males, 42 females. Now I just got to fill in my missing information. Well, to figure out how many females are in band, I got to take 66 minus 36, which is going to give me 30. So if I put 30 here, I know that's correct because that adds up to 66. If I want to find the total amount of people in choir, I'm going to do 12 plus 42, which is going to give me 54. So now there's a total of 54 students in choir, okay? To find the total amount of males, I'm going to add up my rows. I'm going to do 36 plus 12, which is going to give me 48. To add up my females, I'm going to add up this row. So I'm going to do 30 plus 42, and that's going to give me 72. All right, and if I want to find my overall total, you can either add up this column or add up this row. They should give you the same things, and if they don't, that means we did something wrong somewhere. So I'm going to start by adding 66 plus 54, and that's going to give me 120. And then I'm going to double check it. If I add 48 and 72, that also gives me 120, so that means I'm good to go. Okay, so now that we've got our table filled in, we can use this to answer question 5. It says how many students are in the band and are female. So I got to figure out where band and female intersects, which is right here at 30. So there's 30 students who are in the band and are female. All right, the second guy says, what is the probability as a percent that a student is in choir and is male? Okay, so what is the probability that a student is in the choir and is male? Well, I got to figure out how many males are in the choir. So I'm going to come here where male and choir intersect, which is 12, okay, and it just says what's the probability that a student. So I need my total amount of students, which is 120. So I'm going to take 12 out of 120. I'm going to put that in my calculator. I'm going to do 12 divided by 120, which is 0.10. But if I want it as a percent, remember you're going to hit second right parentheses enter in your calculator. That will give it to you as 10%. All right, number 7. What is the probability that a student selected at random? What is the probability that a student is selected at random and they are in the band? Okay, so I need a student that's selected at random and they're in the band. So I need to know how many students are in the band. Well, there's 66 total students in the band because I don't care about male or female at this point. And then there's a total of 120 students. So I'm going to take 66 out of 120. I'm going to put that in my calculator. I'm going to divide them. I'm going to get 0.55. I'm going to change that to a percent, which is going to end up being 55%. Okay? This next section here, it says, Noemi and Denzel are curious about what is the best utensil for eating rice. They each, this says donut. That's a typo. That should say conduct. They each conduct a survey of students in different classes, asking students how often they eat rice and with what utensil they use, okay? So we've got our two surveys here, and it says, complete the relative frequency table on the right to aggregate for the aggregated data, round to the nearest percent. So remember, whenever you aggregate, that's basically asking you to combine and calculate the data. And if it's asking for the conditional relative frequencies, that means I'm not just going to have numbers, I'm going to need to have percents in this table. All right, so let's talk about how often do we use a fork. People who use a fork often. Well, y'all, 6 people in Denzel's survey eat it often and use a fork, okay? And 3 people in Noemi's survey eat it often and use a fork. So that's going to be a total of 9. Out of, I need the total amount of people in the, sorry, not the total amount of people in the survey, the total amount of people who who eat rice often. So to figure out the total amount of people who eat rice often, I'm going to have to do 6 plus 15 plus 7, okay, because that's from Denzel's survey. And then I'm also going to have to add them from Noemi's survey, which is going to be plus 3 plus 16 plus 15, okay? I'm going to add all those up in my calculator real quick. And that's a total of 62 students. So 9 out of 62, but remember, I need that as a percent. So I'm going to do 9 divided by 62, which is 0.15, which is going to be 15%. Okay? Now, when I'm talking about spoons, okay, so how many people use spoons and eat rice often? That's going to be 15 plus 16, okay? So when I do 15 plus 16, I'm going to get 31 out of a total of 62 people eat rice often. So when I put that in my calculator, and I divide them, I'm going to get 0.5, which is 50%. Okay? And now for chopsticks, people who eat rice often and use chopsticks, well, there's 7 here and 15 here, so I'm going to add those together, and I'm going to get a total of 22 people out of 62. So I'm going to do 22 divided by 62. I'm going to get 0.35 or 35%. Okay? So now I got to do the same thing for not often. Okay? So I want to know how many people use a fork but don't eat rice often. Well, that's going to be 6 plus 2, which is going to be a total of 8. Out of, I've got to add up all the people who don't eat rice often to get my total. So that's going to be 6 plus 7 plus 1 plus 2 plus 6 plus 0. Okay, I'm going to add all those up. And I'm going to get 22. So 8 out of 22 don't eat rice often, but when they do, they use a fork. So I'm going to do 8 divided by 22. I get 0.36, which is 36%. Okay? I'm going to do the same thing for spoons. Okay? For not often using spoons, I'm going to have 7 plus 6, which gives me 13 out of 22. Get that as a percent, which is 59%. All right, and then finally for chopsticks, I'm going to take one person does not eat rice often, but when they do, they use chopsticks. And 0 from over here, well, 1 plus 0 is 1 out of 22. I'm going to get that as a percent, which is 5%. And then if you want to go back and double check, you can always add up your percents in the row and make sure they add up to 100, which this guy does, and so does this guy. All right, so I've got my aggregated data in this table, and I'm going to use it to help me answer this question of what is the best utensil to use if you eat rice often. So I'm going to come to people who eat rice often, and the best utensil or the highest percent used is right here at 50%, which is a spoon. All right, so now we're going to start talking about probability. It says of the 195 students in the senior class, 104 study Spanish and 85 study French, with 12 studying both Spanish and French. What is the probability that a student chosen at random is studying Spanish but not French. Okay, so there's a total of 195. So I know that's going to go in my denominator. Okay, is studying Spanish, but not French. Okay, so 104 study Spanish and 85 study French. All right, so 104 study Spanish, 85 study French, but then there's this really important piece of information that says 12 study both. Okay, so I basically have to take that 12 out of the total group. So if I want to know how many just study Spanish, I'm going to take these 12 people out of this group of 104. So I'm going to do 104 minus 12. That's going to give me 92 kids just study Spanish. If I wanted to know how many just study French, I would do the same thing. I would take 85 minus 12, and I would get 73. Okay? But it's asking, what is the probability that they just speak Spanish but not French? So that's going to be 92 out of my total, which is 195. So I'm going to do 92 divided by 195, and I'm going to get 0.47 or 47%. All right. Number 11 says you donate 8 baseballs to a local baseball team. Your uncle donates 12 baseballs. If a total of 50 baseballs are donated, what is the probability that the first pitch of the season uses one of your baseballs or one of your uncle's? All right, so real important word here, and it is or. And whenever we have or, that means we are going to add. All right, so 8, you donate 8. Okay, so what is the probability that it's your baseball or your uncle's? So you donate 8 out of the 50. Because it says or, that means I'm going to add. Okay, and your uncle donates 12. So that's going to be 12 out of the 50. So I'm going to add these together, and I'm going to get 20 out of 50. Or if I want that as a percent, it's going to be 40%. All right, number 12, it says exactly 62% of the students in your school are under 17 years old. In addition, 4% of the students are over 18. What is the probability that the student chosen at random is under 17? Here's my important word, or over 18. Remember, if it is or, that means we are going to add. So I need the probability that they are under 17. Okay, so 62% are under 17. So that's going to be 62 out of 100 if I want to write it as a fraction. Or means we're going to add, okay, over 18. Well, that's going to be 4%, so that's going to be 4 out of 100. When I add these together, I'm going to get 66 out of 100 or 66%. All right, last little section down here, okay? It says, in a class of students, the following data table summarizes the gender of a student and whether they have an A in the class, okay? So here's my information, and it says, what is the probability that a student has an A given that the student is a female, okay? So I got to figure out my total of females. So this is going to be females over, or females is going to be my denominator, and this is going to be females with a A. Okay, so I got to figure out how many total females I have. Well, that's going to be this column right here. So there's 9 total females. And then how many of those have an A? That's going to be 4. So it's going to be 4 out of 9. So that's when I divide that, I'm going to get 0.44 or 44%. All right, 14. What is the probability that a student is a male given that they do not have an A? Okay, so they do not have an A is going to go in my denominator. And this is going to be my males that do not have an A. All right, so how many people do not have an A? That's going to be 5 plus 19, which is going to be 24. And I need to know how many of them do not have an A. Okay, well, so not only, sorry, 19 out of the 24 are males that do not have an A. So I'm going to take 19 divided by 24, and I'm going to get 79%. All right, last guy, number 15. What is the probability that a student has an A and is a male? Okay, so this is asking, okay, that they have, what is the probability that they have an A and is a male? Well, I need to find how many males have an A. So it's going to be 2 out of, so this was males with an A. Okay, and I need to know what is the probability that a student has an A and is a male. Okay, well, y'all, it's not asking out of anything specific, so I'm going to take up all of these totals. So I'm going to add 4 plus 2, which is 6. I'm going to add 5 plus 19, which is 24. That's going to give me 30. So I'm going to take 2 out of 30, which is going to give me 7%.